Hi, Mia.
Hi, Natalie. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for taking the time today. I know you're a busy lady, and I'm really grateful for this time to get to know you better because you are currently a student in one of our certifications. And I'd love to hear, and I think that our audience would love to hear a little bit about what you do, because I know that you're working with entrepreneurs and you've had this incredible career that's led you to this spot today. So let's start by telling people who you are, what's important about you, and then we'll get into it.
Sure. I've heard this on your podcast a few times, but it's so hard to distill who you are into an answer. So, who I am at the moment is I am a mom of three. I'm a single mom. I've got a teen, a tween, and an 8-year-old hurricane. So that's one part of my life. And then I'm also caregiver to my parents. So my mom is 80, my dad is 90. He's had 2 strokes and emergency surgery. And so I have taken over their household. And I'm a business owner, and my business is called Authentic Networker, and it's a networking community. So I lead a networking community that started off with me teaching relationship marketing in a tiny little networking group, which I started out of selfishness because I wanted a networking group with better conversations. And it blew up and it ended up with a cult following. And we expanded it into 120 cities over the first 3 years. So it accordioned a bit over the pandemic, but what led me to coaching was having these conversations with so many business owners and sensing that there was a skill gap. There was the evidence-based knowledge that you are teaching us at Canada Coach Academy. There was something more that I needed to be able to feel confident in that space when we went into coaching territory with this group. And it's been wonderful. It's been a fantastic ride.
Well, that sounds really interesting. So just looking back today, thinking about, that time when you started this relationship group, what do you think was the thing that kind of lit people up and spread the word?
Hmm. Do you know, I think in business, especially in business networking, a lot of people, especially new to business, have their armor up. You've always got to be projecting this persona or this impression of increase, or it's a little bit bulletproof in the networking space. And so you'll show up and everyone is selling and nobody is buying. And it feels a little bit like a meat market, or at least it did to me. And the way that I shifted it was when I started hosting events, I led with conversation games. So we would start with a round of genuine, curious human conversation. So we might ask, what's an unforgettable place you've visited? Or what's the best lesson you've learned from a teacher? Or what's something you've learned from failure? And I'd look around this room and everybody was leaning in. Everybody's eyes were shining. You could have heard a pin drop.
Mm.
And it's so rare to be in a space outside of coaching where people who they're not being lectured to listen or told to listen actively, but they're practicing listening actively. They're maintaining presence. They're in there. They're so curious to learn about each other that the next obvious question is, wow, you're so cool. What do you do? And now they want to know what the
Oh,
other person does. It was just a little shift. I think what lit people up is that we're so unused to having that space held for us. You see it in coaching, right? These people who've never had someone just listen, just allow yourself to speak and feel valued and feel heard. That is what kept people coming back. They're getting to know each other on a much deeper level. And now they wanted to support each other as business owners. And that it was such a nice shift.
I love what you're saying. And my mind's going to so many different places. The first is an article that we have in our program that talks about using listening as the way or avenue to feedback. Because when you ask a question and shut up, people
Mhm.
talk about what's really important to them. And that includes what's going on for them in terms of, like, if it's a work environment and you're wondering about feedback, right? Or even delivering feedback, asking a good question about someone's strategy or performance can lead to a lot of information that you wouldn't otherwise be able to unearth if you just started with a direct approach of, this is what I want to tell you, right? In
Mhm.
terms. The other place I'm going to is this book I'm reading now, which is, I'm almost done, but it's the Unreasonable Hospitality book that is blowing my mind. And it's, again, it's about, he says something so profound that I think I read over it and I thought, wait a minute, I had to go back and say, I have to read this again. And it says, fads come and go, right? We know this because we often talk about in coaching, the only certainty is change. We know that change we count on, right? But he talks about fads come and go, but the only certainty is that people want to feel cared for.
Mhm.
And what you're talking is about, like, that question that you ask is about mattering. It's about how, you matter here. It's not just about what you do, it's about who you are. And
Exactly.
yeah, and that's what coaching, I guess, comes around to as well, right?
I agree with that. And especially in a business environment where you might be brand new, you might be worried about keeping up appearances, or you might have been in the game for 40 years and you're worried about keeping up appearances, or you might be very good at what you do and you're worried about keeping up appearances. But there's this common thread of how will I be perceived? And if you can create a space as a coach or as a business owner where people can show up exactly where they're standing, right where they are, they don't have to pretend, they don't need to be anything more than they are. They don't need to be the foremost guru in the world. They need to show up with what they know and how they can help people. If you can feel like you are accepted in that space, if you matter in that space, things flow from there.
Mm, yeah. So tell me, what have you seen are the sort of the parallels between the business networking and coaching?
That is a good question because there's so many. And when I came to coaching, I thought, oh, we're doing that. And I learned more in coaching we could be doing in business networking. So I think that when you are coaching, and the first thing you do is to set your own emotional space and put your agenda aside. That's really powerful in business networking because in traditional networking, people lead with an agenda. They come in and they start talking. If you think of Simon Sinek and the leading with why instead of leading with how and what. If you go
Mhm.
into a networking environment and you say, oh, hello, nice to meet you. What do you do? And they'll say, well, I am a mortgage broker. I do this, I do this, I do this. People tend to, their fight or flight response goes up very quickly, or they start to defend, oh, I don't need that. Or they start to pigeonhole you, maybe they'll stereotype. Oh, okay, I know exactly what you do. Oh, you're a mortgage broker. And they classify you a certain way. But if you can put your agenda aside and get curious about the other person, right? So turn it around instead of leading with you, leading with them and really coming in with that posture of curiosity and asking those deeper level questions. So if someone says, I'm a realtor, and say, oh, how probing for story, how did you come to be a realtor? How do you enjoy that? What's that like for you on a day-to-day basis? When you start to get to the person underneath that first description, that's when you forge those relationships. And those relationships are what business is built on today. We
Mm,
know that we are in a relationship economy. People are going to do business with people they know and like and trust. And as coaches, we're practicing in the trust factor, getting to know, getting to trust. It doesn't so much matter if our clients like us. It helps, but in the business space, that like is essential too, and the like follows from people trusting you as you get to know them. So I think being able to lead from curiosity, put your own agenda aside, and really focus on those relationships, it's more important than any other branding you can be doing.
mm. I really like what you said, that lead with them, not you,
Mhm.
is what we talk about so much in coaching. Just that one line is, talking about approaching as a coach from, getting curious about their experiences, the client's experiences, right? And their beliefs, their values, their perspective, and self-managing our own in favor of that. And I'll never forget the first coaching like exposure I ever had was through a company called Strategic Coach, and it was led by Dan Sullivan. And he said one of the very first times that I was in a workshop that was actually led by one of his co-facilitators, but he came in to say hello. And he said one thing. He said, if you want people to like you, ask a question and shut up.
Yeah.
That was the wisdom, and I've never forgotten it because it's so true. It's about them, not you. And yeah. So what have you learned about yourself, about your business through this coaching journey so far?
Oh my goodness. I've learned two different things. On the one hand, it's affirmed a lot of my decisions coming into coaching. I've realized that I've been leaning into coaching long before I knew that's what I was leaning into. So I had a lot of life experiences that constellated into this story that brought me to this path. And then I also realized how much I don't know, how much I need to unlearn, having come from education and teaching online courses and in a business mentorship role. How much of that is necessary as a teacher, and how much of it I can learn from coaching about asking a question and shutting up, and learning how to shift from being the sage on the stage to more the facilitator, and really being that thinking partner.
So it just dawned on me that you're working with a lot of people who are in business, starting businesses, I would imagine, or maybe even a little bit further ahead in their business startup, but looking for mentorship. We have coaches in our community who are starting businesses, who are looking to become entrepreneurs now or eventually, like maybe, slowly winding down a career and then setting up a practice as a consultant or a coach. What are some of the most common things you hear in your community, challenges or obstacles people have to overcome as entrepreneurs?
I think that a lot of the entrepreneurs I see who are new have so much passion for what they do. They're subject matter experts. Their hair is on fire with passion. They want to change the world, but they don't know how to communicate that. There is a gap between how they know they can help people and getting those same people to understand their value, to understand, why should I pay a coach for that? What you're saying makes sense, but why does it matter to me? How can they actually sign up as clients? So that's a challenge. Another challenge is this sense of needing to have all the little bits and pieces in place before you start. I think that's common to a lot of coaching clients, not just entrepreneurs, but there's a lot of fact finding that goes on when you're new in the business space, and you have to take all these courses and get all of this knowledge, and then do your website and do all these little bits and pieces before you can take that first step, feeling like you need to know more or have more. That's a challenge for people. And I think another challenge is how to meet people and how to stand out in that really saturated market, how to be yourself in a space that feels crowded. It can be daunting. Those are the things I hear from new entrepreneurs, especially.
And so what would you say about the power of community around what you're doing?
It's everything. The power of community is everything. As a new business owner, especially, because if you think about the online space, it's hard to play in the online space. There's a lot of noise. And there are statistics you can look up on the internet for the number of web searches per day. There's a wheel that shows year by year. I don't remember what it is, but let's say it's 500,000 searches per second, something like that. You get to realize how much noise there is, and no wonder we feel overwhelmed. But if you're able to help people who are within a community, that increases the know, like, and trust factor. That increases your ability to build relationships within that community, because presumably there's something bringing that community together. You're like-minded. You've got some place to start building that relationship, and that's where trust comes from. And one of the things I taught, I stumbled into this, was how to run events to create your community. So I had run this networking group, and again, to go back to that story, it felt selfish. I had little kids, and my babysitter could not come on the nights when most networking events were held. And most of them were downtown. I was in the suburbs, and most of them sucked. And my love language is quality conversation, which is a dialect of quality time. I wanted to have good conversations. And I was like, damn it, I'm going to make my own. It's going to be on Thursday night when I have a babysitter. It's going to lead with conversation. Lo and behold, this community showed up that all valued conversation. I'm sure there's a lot of business owners that don't care, but the ones that did care, those ones showed up and they were there for each other and they were there for me. And when I launched my little offer, nervous though I was, they showed up in droves to support this offer. They didn't care if it was perfect. The community is where the support came from. And so I ended up teaching. Then people started copying my group. I didn't know what to do. I thought, do I send them a cease and desist or what? And I ended up licensing it. I just taught them how to do it. So I ended up licensing. Here's how to run a conversation-based event based on your area of passion. So if you are passionate about fitness, you can run a fitness-based meetup and bring people in and create your own community for people who are fascinated by that. And then when it comes time for you to launch an offer, they know you, they like you, they trust you. You can do that. And so I had coaches come in and run a little networking group in their city. It was local. It was a community based on what they were passionate about. And it gave them a space to play. It gave them some market research. They could ask a question to that group and get the feedback as they were developing their programs. So it ended up being this very powerful thing, creating your own community. We can do that with Facebook groups, but if you can do it locally, it really helps you with your self-esteem. It helps you to really hone in on your purpose, and it keeps you going, right? When I divorced my business partner. It's the hardest thing I've ever gone through. I was crying on the floor every day, let me tell you. But I would get on Zoom and one time I remember crying, having the hardest marriage conversation right before a Zoom where I was teaching goal setting. I had 400 people on the Zoom, not 10 minutes after I wiped myself up. And when I got into that community, it was like the conflict fell away and I was there, and I forgot about everything that came before it. It healed me to have these people around. They didn't even know they were healing me or helping me, but having that space where I had created the culture, it was everything. That's a long answer, but that's my passion. This is where I'm going.
I love the answer. I think first
Yeah.
of all, you're probably resonating with a lot of people in terms of some of the things that you're saying about just being human and having, like children and time constraints and travel constraints, and then having an idea and saying, oh, okay, I'm going to create something. So I'm thinking about the listener, but I'm also thinking about myself. And I have to ask, this know, like, and trust factor that you talk about, if you took me through like how you started your network and that first day where you had the idea and then you put out your offer, like how did you go through that know, like, trust kind of, like, if you could take us down that, how did you take awareness around what you were doing? And then because a lot of people have networks, they know people, but they're afraid to either try and fail and then what, or they don't want to sound like what you were talking about earlier, which is like, I'm trying to sell something, or I'm trying to, like, if people are going to get annoyed, or so if you could talk us through a little bit of that, at least a little bit of your journey, that would be really neat.
That's a great question about knowing, liking, and trusting, because I think it goes back to putting yourself in that other person's shoes. And the funny thing about how that relates to my journey is from another direction in my life. I actually trained as a teacher. So I did my Bachelor of Education before business. And I could not stand the classroom environment. I felt like my wings were clipped. I love that aha experience. I loved teaching, but I didn't want to stand in line for the photocopier and fight with budget cuts. And like, there's something in that environment that wasn't quite the right expression of education for me. It's for many people, I'm so grateful for that. But for me, there was something missing. And I moved into informal education. So I ended up designing curriculum for museums and parks. I designed all the marine biology curriculum for the Vancouver Aquarium, for example, or I managed school programs in Stanley Park. And all of a sudden, I was in these environments that created spaces where people were connecting emotionally with the material. and not intellectually. And over time with this, I got more and more practiced about how you take a boring concept that the board of directors has taught you to teach, or that the curriculum tells you have to teach, and engage people with it emotionally.
Wow.
How can you get people to care about this, and then to take ownership, and then to take action? So that's what I practiced with inadvertently in that space. The trouble with that job, though I loved it, was that it paid an education wage. So when I had kids, it didn't cover daycare for them. So I ended up putting it aside. That's what was in my heart when I launched my business. This sense of connecting people emotionally to what business owners are trying to get out into the world. So take that back to business, to coaching. You have a passion, you know, you can help people. And then it falls on deaf ears when you're trying to connect that to people. And so that's where know and like and trust starts. When you think about what makes you know and like and trust someone, what makes you know and like and trust someone? Can you think of it?
When I see something familiar that I can resonate with, you know, something, yeah, that just it feels familiar, I think, first
Yes.
and foremost.
Yeah.
I have a deep curiosity about.
Yeah. So
Which
your
is almost everything.
your curiosity is lit up, or familiarity or resonance, right? There's something in there. And as a coach, then, if you can think of first, before anything else, who am I trying to help? And it's hard because you get FOMO when you narrow down your ideal client, your ideal coachee. It doesn't mean you're not going to coach other people, but for this launch, for this season, for this offer, can I narrow down who I want to share it with? And when you can think about that person. So for me, my current offer is, let's say it's for business owners who have had to pull over their business to the side of the road for a little while. And now they're having trouble starting the engine again, and they don't have a roadmap, and they know they can, but they need a little push with the car. So currently, that's who I'm working with. If I can think of that business owner, what's keeping them up at night? What do they want? Where are they going? What are their struggles? Not just their business struggles, but their life struggles. What does their heart say when they quiet down? If you can work that into your thing and you can express that, the person reading it goes, oh, it's like she's in my head. And you think the last time you reached for your credit card, you're like, oh, they know me. They know me. Yes. Because if you can demonstrate that you understand their internal space, that emotional space, that's what builds the beginning of the know, like, and trust.
That's so great. I mean, you know, so many things again are coming to mind, but the struggle of the entrepreneur is, you know, I just wrote a paper not long ago, a couple of semesters ago. I wrote a paper on the episodic nature of start and stop, basically, engage, disengage, resist, and re-engage. A journey of an entrepreneur. Like that's what it, you know, it was the premise of the paper. And it was just how we have this episodic kind of, you know, on and off switch of, you know, when we're trying to work towards something as important as building a business. And that was one of the reasons why we brought in the mission work into the program, is because we know how much mission and vision is important to a person's success rate of achieving what they want. When they can tie that into values and beliefs and core, you know, desires and needs to be fulfilled, that they will be more successful because it's a part of their essence, right? And so how would you describe that in your work when you're helping people, you know, like you said, the entrepreneur who put a pause and now is getting back into the game? What kind of work, if any, do you do around, you know, goal setting or visioning or setting that, you know, the what do you call it, the lighthouse, the target, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you've hit the nail on the head. That's foundational. Without doing that vision, mission, values work, or the goal setting that comes from that, you can flounder. And a lot of business owners who have started a business in order to meet say, a financial target within their household. They'll skip a step. And it's this foundational step of understanding their why. And then when they do that start stop, when they're in the weeds, it's very easy to give up and to forget if you don't have that why to hold on to. So I teach a lot of online courses. So writing for your ideal client, or generating referrals, or those sorts of marketing programs. And then I had this one goal setting program that I thought, oh, I'll run it around Christmas. And that ended up being my most popular program of all. I had 800 people come out the second year that I ran it. Everyone wanted to set goals, and they needed a bit of a framework to do it. So coaches, if you're listening, it's the goal setting that people felt like they would tell me, either I set the goals and I forget, or they would tell me I don't set goals and I need help, or they'll tell me, I don't know where to start. They would say things like this. They've been touching it. But the ones who were able to set a goal and to continue to check in with that goal, to continue to have accountability for it, are the ones who are able to see that progress, especially when things get difficult. And from my own perspective, I lost my goal during the divorce and becoming a caregiver. At one point, I remember that my business had been so intimately tied to the branding as a couple at the beginning, that when I became a solo, I felt like my goals were still attached to this partnership that was now a point of pain for me. Not just a point of pain, it was like the pain. It made touching my business, working in my business, feel like I was touching a hot plate. And it took me the courage to step aside and rebrand and discover what's inside me that is driving this mission. What's just me that I want, and the legacy that I want to be able to help people with. And if I took myself out of the equation, what would I want to leave behind that's bigger than me? Once I did that work, everything started flowing again. But that work, it's essential, and it's hard to do in a silo. It's really hard to sit down at your desk and go, okay, what's my vision? It doesn't come. When you're able to share that, bounce ideas off of people, or be in an environment where you can get a little bit of feedback, I think that's very, very helpful to be able to articulate it.
Wow, that's really, really great to hear. And thank you for sharing, so much of your work and yourself. I'm really curious to know, given all your background in teaching and education, and also that emotional tie that you're talking about to teaching, what has been your experience with Canada Coach Academy so far? I know you're still in your program. What?
Natalie, I fangirl so hard. I don't know if you know, but between you and the other learning leaders who have come in, oh my goodness, Canada Coach Academy is the place that I wish I'd had at the beginning, or I wish existed for entrepreneurs, because you have got a place where people can bring the fullness of themselves in their strengths and in their challenges, and you can guide them through this learning, and then they can take it forward and practice and get feedback in that safe emotional space to be exactly where they're at, and take the next step and grow. And I'm a nerd. I love reading. I love learning. I'm a lifelong learner. Every time I do a personality test, learner comes up. And so I'm loving the evidence-based articles and the knowledge that you share with us every week, because that was the pudding I was missing. They say the proof is in the pudding. As an entrepreneur, a lot of us come in with that imposter syndrome, like, I'm good at this, but am I good enough to be an entrepreneur? Having studies that back up what you do, having that knowledge that really reinforces the thing that you've had a hunch about, it really does validate that credibility. And so that's juicy. And the community that you've created, it's restorative. It's like drinking from the well every week. And I think everyone, whether or not they're going to go forward and be a coach, can use these skills in their life as a parent, as a human being, as a business owner, for sure. It's going to enhance every part of my life.
Hmm. As you're talking, I'm struck by like the beautiful diversity among people, because when I think about my own journey, I was really lit up by the power of coaching to support people through change. And call it transformational, call it whatever. I think it's super personal to say what it is for you, but just to witness someone move towards what they want, to grow, to flourish, to change, whatever that is for them. And so I got lit up by multiplying that impact,
Mm.
by being able to not just coach, but to teach others to coach. And community came as a like, oh yeah, and guess what? Get together. It was this kind of, it was like afterthought almost. It was like, oh, by the way, you have a bunch of people who want to do what you do and are actually learning together. So why not create a community around it? And I thought, and you were looking for community with your start, and now you're kind of coming to this coaching sort of lens and seeing what it can do for you. So I appreciate you saying that, because community to me, what I'm realizing is, I've said it many times, and I don't think I said it. I probably took it from someone else who says, people who learn together grow together.
Mm.
I feel like that is the biggest opportunity in our community, right? We are all learning and growing. And I guess we've created our own proverbial arena where we're just like, get in there and battle and come back out scarred and growing, because that's how we grow. So yeah, and it's great to just to see that the way that people are embracing that. It's fun. And like you said, I mean, our facilitators are, top notch. I think I'm, as I say many times, I'm so blessed to be surrounded by such amazing people and professionals in this field who are world class, and you all get to learn from them, right? You all get to experience them. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun. And so what do you think is your sort of next step with coaching when you graduate?
I don't think it'll ever stop. I think I'm here for life, that's for sure. I
Hmm.
would like to keep going. I'm inspired by those of you who have followed the MCC path. So I'd like to keep going with it. I was thinking, what happens when this cohort is done? I won't know what to do with myself. So I would definitely like to continue, because the more I learn, the more I know, the more I realize I don't know.
Mm,
And I think that continuing to be connected to this space and the mentorship and the inspiration, for me, that's really important. I'm living and working in isolation. I have a big network, but they're virtual, and it takes a toll. We talked in demystifying goals about the 5 people around you influencing who you become, and the 5 people around me, well, one of them's 8, she leaves Lego everywhere, and one of them's 90 and he's wearing a bib, and I I have to curate my 5. I have to create the
yeah.
voices that are going to inspire resilience when I am in those difficult times, because they happen unexpectedly. And
Mm,
I know that isolation is not the answer. So long story short, it's staying with coaching, incorporating it into my programs, and continuing to learn, continuing to practice and get better.
mm, yeah. Well, that's great. And good news, we're starting a level 3 pilot. So,
I will guinea pig anything you put out there. I'm there. I'm there for all of it. Absolutely.
yeah. Well, look, I don't know. I'm conscious of time, but not really, because it's been so fun to talk to you. I really just want to say thank you. And is there anything that you want to tell people listening who are thinking about becoming a coach, or thinking about this, am I good enough? Do I have what it takes? Because we all have the am I good enough voice in our,
Yeah,
do I have what it takes to become a coach? What would you say?
I would say you have what it takes to become a coach, because nobody has walked the path that you are walking. And there is someone out there in the middle of the night, awake, with a problem that you can help them solve and you can help them think through, because of your unique experience, because of your unique makeup. You are the right voice for that person. You haven't met them yet, You have not yet met all the people you will help. You
Mm.
don't have to be the shiniest, most polished coach in the world. You can be exactly who you are, exactly where you are, and develop your skills just enough to be able to have that ripple effect. I would say go for it. If you're thinking about it, go for it.
Mm.
You need a sign. This is your sign. Take it.
Yes.
That's what I would say. There you go. There you go.
Well, that was so well said. I think we're just going to
Yeah.
end there. Thank you
Perfect.
so much.
Thank you so much for having me and for your thoughtful questions, Natalie. I appreciate you holding space with me today.
Thank you.